What happens when a sitting governor walks into what he thinks is a friendly late-night interview, only to find himself facing the most hostile interrogation of his political career? Tonight, we're diving deep into the shocking confrontation that left Governor Josh Stein storming off Stephen Colbert's set. And trust me, what you're about to hear will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about media manipulation and political ambush tactics. But before we get into this explosive story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really went down behind the scenes, because this story has layers that go way deeper than what the cameras caught. The Late Show studio was buzzing with its usual pre-show energy when Governor Josh Stein arrived for what his team had been promised would be a lighthearted discussion about North Carolina's economic recovery and his administration's recent policy wins. Stein, known for his measured approach and diplomatic demeanor, had done dozens of these appearances over the years, and this was supposed to be no different. His communications director had specifically been told by Colbert's producers that the interview would focus on positive developments in the state, upcoming initiatives, and maybe some gentle ribbing about Southern politics. Nothing more contentious than the usual late-night fare. But from the moment Stein settled into the guest chair, something felt off. Colbert's usual warm pre-interview banter was noticeably absent, replaced by a cold professionalism that immediately put the governor on edge. The studio audience, typically primed to laugh at Colbert's setup jokes, seemed unusually quiet, almost expectant, as if they knew something the governor didn't. Stein adjusted his tie nervously, glancing toward his staff in the wings, but they were blocked from his view by an unusually large number of production assistants who had positioned themselves strategically around the set. When the cameras rolled, Colbert opened not with his typical monologue-style introduction, but with a direct, almost prosecutorial tone that caught everyone off guard. "Governor Stein, thank you for being here tonight. I want to start with a question that I think our viewers deserve an honest answer to. Your administration has been accused of some pretty serious ethical lapses lately, and I'm wondering if you came on this show tonight thinking you could just charm your way past the tough questions." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Stein's media-trained smile faltered for just a moment before he attempted to regain his composure. "Well, Stephen, I'm not sure what you're referring to specifically, but I'm always happy to address any concerns about our administration's work for the people of North Carolina," Stein replied, his voice steady but his eyes showing the first signs of confusion and wariness. He had prepared for questions about policy, about his legislative agenda, about his political future, but this felt like something entirely different, something more personal and aggressive than anything his team had anticipated. Colbert leaned forward, his signature smirk replaced by something much more predatory. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm referring to, Governor. The sweetheart deals with your campaign donors, the suspiciously timed policy reversals that just happen to benefit your biggest contributors, the way your office has stonewalled transparency requests that might shed some light on these relationships. Did you really think you could come on national television and pretend these issues don't exist?" The audience, sensing the shift in tone, began to murmur, some clearly uncomfortable with the sudden turn toward confrontation. Stein's political instincts kicked in, and he attempted to deflect with a practiced pivot. "Stephen, I think there might be some misinformation you've been given. Our administration has been completely transparent. We've exceeded every disclosure requirement, and we've actually implemented some of the strongest ethics reforms in the country. I'd be happy to walk you through our actual record rather than responding to vague accusations." But even as the words left his mouth, Stein could see that Colbert wasn't interested in a policy discussion. This was something else entirely. The host pressed on, his voice rising slightly. "Vague accusations? Governor, I have documents here. I have emails. I have a paper trail that shows a pattern of behavior that, frankly, I find pretty disgusting. And what I find even more disgusting is that you thought you could come on this show in front of these good people and lie to their faces about it. Colbert gestured toward the audience, many of whom were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether this was part of some elaborate bit or if they were witnessing a genuine meltdown in real time. Stein's face flushed red as the full scope of what was happening began to dawn on him. This wasn't an interview, it was an ambush, carefully orchestrated and designed to humiliate him on national television. His hands gripped the arms of his chair as he tried to maintain his composure, but his voice carried a new edge when he responded. "Stephen, I came here in good faith, expecting a professional interview, not whatever this is supposed to be. If you have specific allegations, then make them clearly, but I'm not going to sit here and be attacked based on unnamed sources and mystery documents that you're waving around like props." Colbert's eyes lit up at the pushback, as if this was exactly the reaction he'd been hoping for. "Oh, you want specifics? Let's talk about the Meridian Development deal. Let's talk about how your office fast-tracked environmental approvals for a project that just happened to be funded by 3 of your largest campaign contributors. Let's talk about how those same contributors were invited to private dinners at the governor's mansion, while their permits were being rubber-stamped by your environmental agency. You want to explain that to these people?" He turned to gesture at the audience again, but now there was something almost theatrical about it, as if he was performing outrage rather than feeling it. The governor's media training began to break down under the sustained assault. "Those permits went through the normal review process, Stephen. Every environmental standard was met. Every regulation was followed to the letter. The fact that some of the investors supported my campaign doesn't create some conspiracy. It means they believed in the economic development vision that the people of North Carolina voted for. You're creating connections that simply don't exist, and frankly, I'm starting to question what your real agenda is here tonight." "My agenda?" Colbert shot back, his voice now carrying a sharp edge that had completely replaced his usual comedic timing. "My agenda is to ask the questions that the people of North Carolina deserve answers to. My agenda is to hold public officials accountable when they think they can hide behind talking points and spin. And right now, my agenda is to figure out why you thought you could come on this show and insult the intelligence of everyone watching by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Stein could see his communications director frantically trying to get the attention of someone, anyone, who might be able to intervene, but the production crew seemed to be deliberately ignoring the growing chaos. The audience was no longer just uncomfortable. They were beginning to look genuinely concerned, with some people whispering to each other and others pulling out their phones to record what was clearly becoming an unprecedented television moment. "Stephen, I don't know what's gotten into you tonight, but this isn't journalism. It's character assassination," Stein said, his voice rising as his carefully maintained political persona finally began to crack. "You've invited me here under false pretenses. You're making accusations without evidence, and you're grandstanding for your audience instead of having a genuine conversation about the issues that matter to people. This is exactly what's wrong with media today, turning everything into theater instead of actually informing the public." Colbert stood up abruptly, towering over the seated governor, in a move that felt more like a courtroom drama than a late-night talk show. "Theater? You want to talk about theater? Let me tell you what theater is, Governor. Theater is you pretending to be a public servant while you're actually running a pay-to-play operation out of the governor's mansion. Theater is you coming on this show thinking you could charm your way past serious questions about corruption in your administration. And theater is you sitting there acting indignant when someone finally has the courage to call you out on it." The governor's face was now visibly flushed with anger, and his voice shook slightly as he responded. "That's enough, Stephen. I've tried to be respectful here. I've tried to engage with your questions even though they're based on false premises and conspiracy theories, but I'm not going to sit here and be slandered on national television. If you had legitimate concerns, you could have raised them through proper channels. You could have requested interviews with my staff. You could have done actual investigative work. instead of this ambush performance art. The host's response was swift and brutal, delivered with a cold precision that cut through the studio like a blade. Proper channels? Governor, we tried proper channels. We submitted requests for documents that were ignored. We asked for interviews with your staff who suddenly became unavailable. We followed every proper channel you're talking about, and what we got back was stonewalling, deflection, and the kind of bureaucratic runaround that makes people lose faith in government entirely. So excuse me if I decided to use the one platform. I have to ask these questions directly, since your administration seems allergic to transparency. Stein was on his feet now, his political composure completely shattered, jabbing his finger toward Colbert in a gesture that looked more like a street confrontation than a television interview. You're lying, Stephen, and you know you're lying. My office has never received any formal requests from your show. We've never been contacted by your producers about any investigation, and we've certainly never stonewalled any legitimate media inquiry. What you're doing right now is libel, it's defamation, and it's the kind of reckless journalism that destroys people's lives and careers based on nothing but ratings and political theater. The audience was now in complete chaos, with some people standing up to get a better view, others trying to leave, and still others holding up phones to capture every moment of what was clearly an unprecedented breakdown of the normal late-night television format. Security personnel had materialized from nowhere and were positioning themselves strategically around the set, though it wasn't clear whether they were there to protect the host, the guest, or simply to maintain order in an increasingly volatile situation. Colbert, seeming to feed off the chaos he had created, pressed his attack even further. You know what I find really interesting, Governor? The way you're reacting right now. If these were just baseless accusations, if there was really nothing to hide, wouldn't a confident public servant simply address the questions and move on? Instead, you're up there pointing fingers, raising your voice, making threats about lawsuits. That doesn't sound like innocent behavior to me. That sounds like someone who got caught and doesn't know how to handle it. I'm done with this, Stein said, his voice now carrying a finality that made everyone in the studio freeze. This isn't an interview, it's a hit job, and I refuse to participate in it for another second. Stephen, I don't know what's happened to you. I don't know what's happened to this show. But what you're doing right now is beneath the standards of journalism. It's beneath the standards of basic human decency. And it's certainly beneath the standards that your audience deserves from someone in your position. The governor began removing his microphone with sharp, angry movements, his hands shaking slightly from adrenaline and fury. You want to assassinate my character on national television. You want to destroy my reputation based on conspiracy theories and unnamed sources? Fine. Do it without me sitting here legitimizing this circus by my presence. But don't pretend this is journalism. Don't pretend you're serving the public interest, and don't pretend you're anything other than what you've shown yourself to be. Tonight, which is a bully with a platform who's more interested in creating controversy than seeking truth, Colbert made one final attempt to maintain control of the situation, his voice carrying a note of desperation as he realized his guest was actually leaving. Governor, if you walk off this set right now, it's just going to look like you have something to hide. It's going to look like you can't handle tough questions. It's going to look like everything I've been saying tonight is true, and you don't have any way to defend yourself against it. Stein paused at the edge of the stage, turning back with a look of pure disgust. Stephen, the only thing walking off this set proves is that I have enough self-respect not to participate in whatever this pathetic display is supposed to be. You've shown your true colors tonight, and they're ugly. Really ugly. With that, Governor Josh Stein walked off the Late Show set, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shell-shocked host, and what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about television moments in recent memory. The studio fell into an eerie silence, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in for everyone present. Colbert stood alone at his desk, The carefully constructed persona that had made him a household name completely stripped away, revealing something much darker and more troubling underneath. So there you have it, the complete breakdown of one of the most shocking confrontations in late-night television history. What started as a routine political interview turned into a character assassination attempt that backfired spectacularly, leaving more questions than answers about what really motivated this unprecedented attack. Make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the headlines, and comment below with your thoughts on who you think was really in the wrong here, because this story is far from over.